It's funny how, people will just be chatting normal and then all of a sudden the countdown starts and they're like, oh, okay,
Now I
I gotta
can't.
be all formal and official now. Like, no, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be like just hanging out and having a chat. Sort of like a chat among friends, except we've never met before. So no.
Yeah, well, there you go.
But,
A chat among new friends, I guess. Maybe.
Yeah.
among
Yes.
new friends. There you go. That's right. Yeah. Well, welcome to Conversely, the show that takes people with diverse backgrounds and has them converse about subjects that they may have converse opinions on. And I've got two wonderful guests today that I'm excited to talk to. I'm just going to go in the order they're on my screen here. First up is Jonathan Dumas. Is that right, Dumas?
It's Dumas. Yeah.
Dumas?
Yeah.
With a silent S. Okay.
Yeah, yep.
I was not going to, that would not have been my first guess. All right,
No.
very nice. Okay. Yeah, no, that makes sense. All right, so Jonathan Dumas is a career transition coach, organizational psychologist, a speaker, a DEI consultant, and he's passionate about joy, authenticity, community, and equity. Does that sound like an accurate description of you, Jonathan?
Yeah, those are all me. All my values. That's me. Yeah. Thanks so much, Scott.
And then next up is Steve Anderson, who is an expert in strategic risk and business growth and is the author of the book, The Bezos Letters, about Jeff Bezos. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your book, Steve?
Sure. The short version is I analyzed the letters to shareholders that Jeff Bezos wrote from 1997 to 2018 and realized there were some threads through those letters that he talked about how he grew Amazon. And so the book is about the letters, and the subtitle is 14 Principles to Grow Your Business Like Amazon.
Okay, so it's kind of a book to help people grow. I mean, it's not a self-help, but kind of like that for your business, right?
Correct. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. All right. Well, so I thought that maybe I've got a hypothetical question that I'm going to propose to discuss. But first, I thought maybe we'd do a couple of would you rather questions, kind of get to know each other a little bit. That'd be kind of fun. I'm sure you've both done would you rather type of questions before.
Yes.
So first one is would you rather have people spread a terrible lie about you or have people spread terrible but true things about you?
Ooh.
So either way, it's a bad thing.
No, it's
Who's
a bad
gonna go
thing either
first?
way. Yeah, I'll go. I'll go. I think I'll do the terrible but true things. I think
Okay.
it's like, I did them. So it's like if it is what it is what it is. We just got to own up to it. Face the music. What would be interesting to see is like the things that people bring to light that like they think is terrible, and I'd be like, oh, I didn't think that was a big deal.
Right.
But I think the thing, if somebody were to spread rumors about me that weren't true, that would bother me more than like, no, I did that. I did. But like, yeah, the opposite would just bug me for the rest of my life.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually would probably agree with that. That things not true, I think would bother me more. So I would just agree. I
Yeah.
don't have to
Yeah.
restate
So-
what Jonathan said. So
So just to have just to play devil's advocate, I guess my argument for the other side would be, at least you could fight against it, right? Like if they're spreading terrible things that are true, like, well, yep, that's right. But if they're
Yeah.
spreading terrible things that are a lie, at least you have a legitimate reason to argue against it and to try and say, no, that's not true, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, it would be, I don't know, yeah. Either one's bad.
I could see that too, Scott. But I feel like nowadays, like folks don't even listen to reason. So
Right,
it's
doesn't
like-
even matter if
Yeah,
you're...
yeah.
Yeah,
So-
once it's out there, it is true,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's true or not.
Yeah, it's gonna take a mind of its own. But
That's
even, I mean, the reverse side is true, anyways. Even if I, have a good apology or anything like that, like there's some people that I will never be able to talk to or face or whatever. So it's a terrible situation all around, to be honest.
Right. Either
Yeah.
one's bad, which most of the time the would you rathers is two bad situations.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it seems like we're in kind of a mindset now that it doesn't matter to people whether it's true or not. Which is sort of not even sort of disappointing to me. And I think a lot of social media is perpetuating that idea. If it's on social media, whatever platform you want to pick, therefore it must be true. And then it becomes really hard to argue against it or say anything that's not true or whatever. So it seems to be certainly more divisive now. And I really do wonder how much the instantaneous communication is feeding into that and prompting it, I guess is maybe the way I would say it. So I think both are bad.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Steve. Like the instantaneous piece, like it runs away, the story runs away before anybody actually has a chance to, yeah, even address it, number one. But two, it's like folks have created these narratives. Even if something happens in the past, they're experiencing it right now. So that experience right now, all the emotions right now are happening. But like this person's already processed it, moved through it. And so those two feelings and emotions, past, present, are converging in the middle. And it's always interesting. I've thought about like this for myself. If like something were to come to light, if something like that were to like happen to me, how would I like acknowledge that and address that and like try and find some way to move forward? And a lot of times it has to do with that individual person and like how you do that and the people that you're surrounding with. Can you show growth? Because ultimately, the people that are going to have these preconceived ideas about you, they're just gonna be. But like those that want to choose to see your growth, think a little bit more critically, I would say, about that, will do that. And so you can't please everybody. But this is a tough one, Scott. This is a hard one because
it is. All right. Well, I have a related would you rather, another one. So next one is, would you rather detect every lie you hear or get away with every lie you tell?
All right, I went first last time. Steve, you got this.
I know. I figured you were going to say that. Would I rather? Huh. So say the first one again for me. Make sure I
So
heard it right.
detect every lie you hear or get away with every lie you tell. So either you know when other people are lying or no one knows when you're lying.
I guess I would prefer knowing when others are, so I know how to respond. And I don't know that I want to get away with one. I try not to lie. So and if I do, if it's and it could be unintentional. I don't know. That again, another. I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong answer to that.
Right,
But
right.
I would choose the first one.
I'm gonna zag here, Steve. I'm going to go the opposite. That I would get away with the lie. I think knowing when somebody's lying to me, I think internally I'd be like, what the like? Why did you lie? Yeah, to some extent, like internalize that and like probably overthink it, overanalyze for myself of like why that person's lying. Which I'm an ADHDer, which a characteristic of that is like this hyper attentiveness to emotions and internalizing things. So that would drive me up the wall to be like, why the F is somebody lying to me?
So it's not so much that you want to be able to tell lots of lies and get away with it. You just don't want to know when other people are lying.
Yeah. If somebody's going to tell me something, I'm just going to take it at face value. And oftentimes I'm, the way that folks, unless they're good liars, and some folks believe they're better liars than they are, usually I can figure it out or tell or whatever, or even if, hey, that's a nice hat and it's not, I'm wearing a hat and it's not nice. Whatever, I feel good about it anyways. Thank you so much. I'm too cool to be embarrassed with stuff like that. But yeah, I think I would want to give away with lies. Also, I think I don't know, it might be a superpower. I don't know. I wouldn't try and do anything like malicious or anything like that. But yeah. That's what I would say.
I mean, you could use that to make a lot of money. Either one of them, really, to make a lot of money playing poker or something, right? Like if you could tell when other people are lying, or if you could always get away with lying, like.
Oh my gosh!
There you go.
Yeah.
Just write your checks.
Yeah, there it is. I'd quit everything I'm doing right now.
So I think I know what your answer to the third would you rather is then, Jonathan at least. But the third one is, would you rather hear a comforting lie or an uncomfortable truth? And it sounds like you'd rather hear a comforting lie and just believe it's true.
Yeah, and I think I'd rather hear uncomfortable truth.
An uncomfortable truth?
Yeah,
I think that's where growth happens.
Yeah. I was actually gonna say uncomfortable truth this time, though, Scott. I know
Okay.
I might sound like counterintuitive here, but
That's
I think
all right. Yeah, that's
but I think if somebody's gonna be, I talk to my partner about this all the time, and I'm like, hey, what you say doesn't have to be perfect, and actually what you could say can hurt my feelings. I just want to know what's going on. Like, tell me. I've talked to my managers about this. I tell people, like, when they want to give me feedback, just tell me. We have a good enough relationship to figure it out and navigate it. Instead of ruminating or tell me something that's not going to be helpful. Like, somebody gave me some feedback the other day that was completely unhelpful, and I was so annoyed by it. But like, I want to be, make me uncomfortable. Let's push through the mess. I agree with Steve.
I think it depends on the situation too, though, right? Like,
Yes.
Sometimes a comfortable lie is something it's especially if it's a minor thing and like it's not gonna affect the way you go forward. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
You know, a comforting lie that means you don't grow and change for the future is a bad thing. Mm-hmm. But especially if it's something that's done and gone and it's in the past, and you know, like your mom tells you, you know, when you were 4, you were a great kid. You weren't in trouble at all. Well, maybe you were a handful, but like that's not really going to affect, you know, like that's probably okay. Things like that. So it kind of depends on the situation, and of course there's the classic. Your wife asks you if the dress, you know, makes her butt look big, and like, no, of course not. You know,
I was just thinking that. She said, "You're going to tell me the truth?" I said, "Absolutely not."
Yeah.
Right. So there are situations like that where probably a comforting lie is nice, right? But yeah, you do have the problem. Well, and Steve, I don't know if this came up in your book with Bezos, but you know, growing a company, you need the uncomfortable truths in a situation like that. You don't need a bunch of yes men just going with whatever you say.
And sooner than later.
Yeah.
So and depending on the situation, I feel like I could go for either one on that one, but, which isn't really what you're supposed to say on a would you rather. You're not supposed to say it depends.
Come on, Scott.
But I think in general I would go with, if I had to just pick one, not knowing the situation, I'd probably go with the uncomfortable truth as well. But there are a lot of times when a comforting lie can be a good thing. So.
Yeah. Save an argument for sure.
Yeah, or grandma's on her deathbed, and you know her favorite grandson is getting a divorce. Like you're not going to tell her, right?
Yeah.
You know, just let her die happy, right?
Yeah,
that kind of thing. So
yeah.
All right, so you may have noticed a theme to the 3 would you rathers, all dealing with lying and such. So my hypothetical or question for discussion is, if everyone in the world was mentally incapable of lying, if lying was not a possibility, how would that change the world?
I feel like there's a movie somewhere that's like something about this.
Kind of. It starts that way, and then the one guy all of a sudden is able to lie. I think it was called The Invention of Lying, actually.
Okay. Oh my gosh. What's so interesting about this question is it's so hard to like even picture like a world without lying, because like I'm trying to think how often even do I talk where I'm like, oh, that's not I don't know, that's actually not a lie, or I don't realize that I'm lying. Rather,
right.
For example, if somebody asks me how I'm doing, and like my like go-to response is like, oh, I'm good, when you know I just got into like I slept terribly, project didn't go as well, I'm behind on like 18 different things, whatever. I'm actually not doing well. Oh, I wonder like how those interactions would go. I probably would hope that they would alleviate the pressure to be, I don't know, perfect, or show up with like a mask or something like that. Like I would hope that like I could show up more authentic. Like if somebody would ask me how I'm doing, oh, I'm doing terrible. Ooh, do you still need to meet? Do you need to do something else? or if maybe it's more like blunt. I don't know. That's really cute. That's a good question.
Or maybe people would stop. I mean, we kind of say, hey, how's it going? How you doing? And most of the time we're not really asking.
We're not really
how
interested.
Are you doing?
Yes.
It's more just a greeting, right? Like
Yeah.
it's I say how are you doing, you say oh good, and then we go on. Like
Yep.
And so would people stop asking those questions? Like would that not be a greeting because you don't really want to know?
That's a good point. That is a really good point. I think that they wouldn't.
Well, and again, I mean, part of my thought process was, do we even have the time to be that transparent? and maybe we change how we greet people and we don't ask those kind of standard questions as icebreakers, and if somebody's, goes deeper into whatever's going on with them, we'd probably get to know people better and we'd probably not get a lot done. If that makes sense. I mean, I
Yeah,
think what
yeah.
I'm struggling to
We'd spend too much time talking about how you're not feeling great and
right,
all the things going on with you. Yeah.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
And I don't know that I want feedback from everybody.
Well, and the question is that you're not able to lie. It doesn't necessarily mean that you always have to tell the truth, right? You can say nothing, or you could maybe equivocate, right? I guess we have to kind of define what lying means too, right? Is holding back and not telling the whole truth count as lying? Is it?
Right.
Yeah.
I've gotten into multiple conversations about this. I don't think there's a difference. I think that there's a difference of like withholding or not purposely not saying something is different from straight out lying, because I feel like lying is like an action. You lie to lie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I guess there is lying by omission, but then I go by like, was that like a malicious intent, so on and so forth. So something Steve said, I don't know if we would, actually something you said, Scott, of like, maybe they wouldn't ask those like questions then of like getting to know. I do believe that we would get to know people a little bit better, or like some things actually I feel like depending on the industry, where you work, what you're doing, folks would not ask that because like they actually don't care. So like if I'm asking how you're doing, I don't actually care. I'd probably just be like, yo, can you send that email? And I would probably respond to be like, no, or I'll send it tomorrow or something like that. Or just be honest and say like,
and there's a
actually,
good example of how you could technically tell the truth, but not real. Like if they say, can you send that email? Yes, that's true. I can. Doesn't mean I'm going to.
Yeah,
right.
yeah,
So am
yeah,
I
yeah.
lying by saying that? Because like technically I'm answering. Will you send the email? No. Can you
Yeah.
send the email? Yes, I am able to.
Yeah, yeah, that's so funny. And even the phrasing might be more direct. I feel like people might be more
Right,
direct.
right. You'd
Yeah.
have to be more careful about how you ask questions, I guess, wouldn't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
so
and
funny.
I keep thinking, I mean, there are very few people who I trust feedback with, meaning, just random somebody I'm meeting. I don't know that I really want to know how they are, right? So again, I think that would change the conversation. And I'm not sure I want to tell a stranger.
Right. Like if you guys jumped on the call here and I said, "Hey, how you guys doing today?" and you started telling me about all the bad things in your life, that
Right.
would be a little
Or
weird,
all the good things. I
right?
mean, it could be good things too,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah,
it's
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
still,
But either way, a great thing. Oh, I'm doing great. I just, had this great thing happen to me last night. Now it sounds like you're bragging,
right. Yep.
Or
Yeah.
yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I think it depends on how much you want to show up. So when I think about even authenticity or even vulnerability, because they're connected, right? I think that when we think about even showing up and saying like, this is what's going on with me, there's like levels, there's levels of vulnerability, there's levels of showing up. So you don't have to tell everybody your life story. But I do imagine that folks would be like, I don't know. I would, at least the people that are in my circles that are honest about that question, if I ask it and I'm actually truly asking, they will say whatever, like, I'm not doing good, or they'll sit with it more, which I think that's what I'm getting at. And instead of like just responding with the good thing or I'm good, I'm fine, it would probably be like sitting with, am I good? I don't know. Good question. Or not answer it at all, just like omit it.
I think what you said there to me is key is in by circles, right? So that to me says that there is a much smaller group that you are more transparent with, you are more connected with, and I think that is very different than just in general, people randomly you might.
When I say circles, it's like inner circle, there's a second layer of circle, then there's broader circle. So when I'm talking about my circles, what I'm referring to more so is is like my industry, the folks that I have second or third-dairy connections with, those are more so. But if I'm talking about my friends, my family, that inner circle, I'll be more explicit about that. But but to your point though, Steve, you're absolutely right. In my inner circles, like I'm a very, very different person, like vastly different person showing up. So there is a clear distinction.
So is that lying to the other people that you're not? I mean,
Right.
then I think we go down rabbit
Is
holes
lying
now.
is lying separate from just being deceitful, right?
Yeah.
Lying is a type of deceiving and being deceitful, but does that mean if you can't lie, does that mean you can still deceive in other ways, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's where I
yeah.
would put the withholding information, not saying false information.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
There's some levels there.
That's what I was saying, right? Like if I go to y'all and I'm not doing well, I'd say, you know what? I'm not doing well. And I would leave it at that. Going deeper, those are going to be different conversations. That's what I'm referring to.
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. But like, there is something about that omission piece. There is something about the omission piece that I'm really, really curious about. Because I've had multiple conversations about, is omitting information like technically lying? And
I think it depends.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
I think it depends somewhat, because in some situations you don't include everything, and it's not because you're trying to hide it necessarily, right? Like if I say, how are you doing? And maybe, you're a little bit stressed and some things are bugging you, but you just say, oh, I'm doing all right, Well, you're not trying to hide the fact that the other things are happening. It's more just, well, in this situation, it doesn't make sense to bring up this stuff. And,
Exactly.
Yeah. So you're not really trying to be deceitful, even though you kind of are deceiving, if that makes sense.
Well, I struggle with the word deceiving. I think to me, I'm hearing more discernment.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
That's
I was going to say
What
that.
to share when with who.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it could be deceiving. But I think there's some other nuances there.
Yeah, and something you said earlier, Steve, too. You said that like I'm only going to like trust feedback or actually even engage on a deeper level with certain people, right? Mm-hmm. And when I hear that, I hear like, who is the people that I feel safe enough, psychologically safe enough to like engage with that on a deeper level, because they know me, they know how to speak to me, and we know how to connect to each other. And those other people, I don't know if I need to necessarily go to those depths. So yeah, there is a nuance to like, is it deceit? Is it like actually, because I hear some of that is like, is it deceit almost has negative connotations to it. I'm wondering what that other word could be, right? Of like, I don't know what that could be.
That's why I like discernment.
Yeah,
discernment's pretty
What you
good.
share and what you don't, or what you tell and what you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then of course also there's lots of things that aren't objective, right? Like if you say, does this shirt look nice? Well, if you don't think it looks nice, then would it be lying for you to tell me yes it does? But like it's not necessarily. Some people might think it does, and you might think it doesn't, and so where's the lie or the truth in that, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, if you were incapable of lying, does that? So is it just things that you are aware of what's true and what's not? Is it, lying about your opinion? How does that work? Like, let's say back in history, right? They didn't know that the sun was the center of the solar system, right? They thought the Earth was the center of the solar system. Okay. That was just because they didn't know, not because they were lying about it, right? So would somebody at that point, if they were incapable of lying, would they not be able to say the Earth is the center of the solar system because it's not true? Or would they only be able to say that if they knew it wasn't true?
That's a good
and if you can't say things that aren't true, even if you don't know it, that would be an interesting way to make scientific discoveries. Just have people say things, and if they're unable to say it, it must be wrong.
Yeah, that was gonna be my next question, Scott. Is this like a biological thing that like in us that we don't have the ability to do that, or is this like
I don't know.
somebody's following us around with like a little zappy thing saying like that's a lie?
That would be
That's
really interesting if it was a thing where you just literally couldn't say something that wasn't true, even if you didn't know that it wasn't true.
Oh, yeah.
But that would be a whole nother level of, lying and stuff.
Yeah. That'd be,
So then if you're not able to lie, are you better off to not know things so that you can, not have to tell the truth about them?
I think that depends on the person, right?
Sure.
Yeah, but I will say that y'all are making me like dig deep into my philosophy minor here. I really do wonder of like when you hear that phrase like ignorance is bliss, right? And like how some folks really truly navigate the world in like a level of ignorance around a wide variety of things. And they say things with like just this steadfastness of like I believe this to be true, or based off my experience this is true. So to your point, Scott, like if we grow in awareness at that point, does it then become impossible to keep saying that thing? Like, and to what Steve said earlier, when we hear like that truth, when we're confronted with truth, is there a possibility of growth there? So that way, depending on how this whole lying thing or not able to lie thing changes inside us as we get older, right? So kids would have a different experience than like 30 plus year old adult, 50-year-old adult, whatever. Like their experience is changing as they're growing in knowledge or perspective or whatever. I'm curious question. I'm wondering.
Well, Jonathan, I think that's an interesting point because I do think age makes a difference. I think looking at you two, I'm probably on the other end of the age bracket, and I think it seems to me the more life experience you have, I think that's where some of my comments around a limited number of people I would trust for actual feedback, and some of those kinds of things, because I may have had more experiences, or someone older has more experience, either positive or negative, in terms of feedback, and I am now pretty careful about letting people know, what kind of feedback I want from them, based on either relationship status or what I perceive as their knowledge base to be able to talk about, etc. So I do think age makes some difference there.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm surprised that we've only been talking about lying in like your relationships with people, and not in the broader sense of how it would affect the world. Like think about court cases and trials. You basically wouldn't have trials, right? But you also wouldn't have this divisive stuff where, think about like these police interactions, right? Where one person says, oh, it was excessive force, and another says, no, he attacked the cop first, or he had a gun, or whatever. You wouldn't have any of that because people wouldn't be able to lie, right? They would tell the truth.
Yeah.
You would know this happened this way. This person did that.
Yeah. But then that would be from their perspective, right? So that goes back to the shirt comment you made.
Sure.
So it's like, to me, I'm not a Cubs fan. I'm a Dodgers fan. So like, I'm not going to say that that Cubs sweater looks good, right? But other Cub fan would potentially say that. So I even think of like, like perspective, how they experienced something, what they saw might feed into that honesty.
Well, I this has actually been something I've been thinking about recently. When we talk about perspective, or we talk about, again, in situations where people see the same thing but describe it completely differently.
And not because they're necessarily lying, right?
Yeah.
It's not. I don't think it's lying. It's what they saw, what their perspective. I mean, all those kinds of things. And in the past, what kind of triggered this thought, Scott, was your comment about court cases. in the past, I would say up until just a few years ago, video was true. Regardless of who saw what, if you had video, that was true.
That was the truth, yeah, because you could see it.
And we are very close, if not already there, that what you see on video isn't that anymore. Because video can be created now to do anything. And so what impact will and does that have on, quote, what's true, and how we determine what's true?
To a certain extent, not only can we now, fake videos and stuff, but even before that, I think recently there's been some stuff where I don't know if it's people subconsciously seeing something different because they don't want to see it a certain way, or what it is, but you can have video of something and people can still disagree on what happened. Mm-hmm. Again, back to some of these incidents of, police interactions and things, right? We've had video of some of these, and you can see what happened, and people still are on opposite sides and saying, no, it was like this, no, it was like that. Well, it's on the video, like we can see it, right?
Yeah.
And that's not even fake video. And then you add in fake video.
And you add fake video on top of that.
Yeah. And it's all convoluted.
And so I think some of that is, sometimes it's intentionally being deceitful, sometimes lying, right? Which, of course, in this scenario would not be allowed. But sometimes I think it's almost a subconscious thing where people don't want to believe that it was this way, and so they see it a different way. I don't know.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say, like, what role does even bias play? And I don't mean bias in like a negative connotation, but like, again, our perspectives, our backgrounds, the way that we grew up, who we interacted with, influence, to Steve's point, like how they go about the world, what they see. And so even when we see a video or have an interaction or somebody says something to us, depending on where all the other stuff behind us, right, and how we've lived our lives, who we've interacted with, so on and so forth, like it's going to influence how we engage with that, influence how we see that, and through the lens. And the psychological and sociological terms are like escaping me, but there is like a term where everybody can see the same thing, and then they all like express something differently. There's been so many studies on this over the last few decades, but it's so interesting. So
how much of our biases ultimately stem from maybe lies in the past?
Exactly.
That have been passed down. And so if no one was ever able to lie, now it's not going to get rid of everything, but some of that,
Yeah. Then I think chicken before the egg. Chicken or the egg, right?
Yeah, sure.
So if we don't know something, we say it to the best of our ability, and we believe that thing to be true based off our experiences. So we pass that thing down. That person learns something new. This happens every day. Learns something new. They have conversations with the person that taught them, their family, friend, whatever. And they're like, no, that's not how I see it. Well, here's some evidence. This is the experience that I'm seeing. Oh, and then sometimes they change, sometimes that. And then they would probably start communicating and changing and doing all those things differently. Or you grow more entrenched in what you believe or whatever. So it's so interesting because like that's what I think about. It's like, is it a chicken or the egg here? I would hope like the optimist in me says that like if I were to be somebody were to show me, something about myself going into those would you rather questions and telling me that uncomfortable truth, I would hope that I would be able to sit with that and like grow from it. And not be able to like lie about that thing again. It's so interesting. Yeah. I love this, by the way. This is like the stuff I talk about this is the stuff I talk about all the time.
I heard you say a philosophy minor?
Yeah. I literally talked for like 4 years of my undergraduate, just, philosophical thought, political philosophical thought, all that stuff. So this is my jam right here. Yeah.
Well, and how about politicians, right? If they couldn't lie,
that would be interesting. That would be very interesting.
It'd be a completely different world, right?
Yeah.
Well, and I would ask the question: we know politicians lie. but I'm thinking of the ones that promise this or that, and they're going to do this or that. Do they actually believe what they say?
Right. Are they lying when they say, I'm going to do this? Or do
Right.
they just
Yeah.
change later on?
So
Yeah.
how much would it change? I guess
Right.
is
That's
the
a good
question that
question.
comes to mind. Or when they get in office, whatever that is for them, do other realities come in that either prevent them from accomplishing it, or they didn't realize it was so complicated, or right, whatever the reasons are. We talk about politicians lying. They certainly don't always fulfill their promises. I mean, how much of it do they actually believe? And maybe if they're running for reelection, are they worse? I don't know.
I don't know.
But
Yeah.
I guess either the pushback or the thought is that, and again, I think Jonathan, like you, I probably am more optimistic. I give people the benefit of the doubt until proven wrong, or at least shown wrong. I won't say proven because I'm even that's starting to become a little harder to think about. But yeah, I think that's an interesting question. So how much, given your scenario, Scott, what would change?
Yeah.
Yeah. I actually was thinking the same thing, Steve, because like if they are, because they don't know what they don't know, right? And they're only privy to a certain amount of information. But like once they're in the office doing the role, then they get, all the other stuff gets revealed, or all the true like work has to get done. And so like, what are they shown? And I would imagine that, even in our state legislatures, local government, so on and so forth, like they get knowledge that we just don't have. Like they get a wide array of different things. And so it does change, it does shift. But I'm curious, like, does that change how they communicate the information, right? So like for me, if you can't do something, I want to know the why, because you said you were going to. So I want to know why you can't get it done. But I feel like with politicians, it's really frustrating because they'll point fingers to the other side, or they'll say like, we're gonna get this done, and like kick the can down the road. And I'm just like, tell me why. Like, tell me what's going on. I want to know.
Well, and some things are, it's really, some things you can see why it's not getting done, right? You can see the division, and it's difficult, building the wall. Something like that, right? Okay. If you're in favor of that, you can see why that might not get done anyways, right? Mm-hmm. And if you're against it, then you can also see why, but you're probably glad that's that way. But something less divisive, like we just had daylight savings time, right? We just fell back, right?
Yeah.
Almost everybody I talk to anyways says, why are we doing this? Why don't we get rid of daylight savings time? Everyone seems to, for the most part, say either let's get rid of it or whatever, I don't care. And there's always a bill in Congress to do it.
Every year.
Still doesn't get done.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Why can we not do something that most people support and isn't really a huge thing? It's not like this. It's not abortion. It's not the wall. It's not, one of these big things. It's daylight savings time. Like nobody's going to get all up in arms about it. Like we still can't do that.
Yeah.
Well, and I feel like that decision is not do we have it or not have it, but which one do we settle on?
Sure. But again, who cares? Either way, just pick one.
Well,
I don't know.
I you're right. And you twice a year you read more about it. And, do you want your kids going to school in the morning in the dark, or do you want them coming home in the dark? I mean, that
we got electricity. We got lights. Who cares? Like, I don't know, whatever. Just pick one.
Yeah.
That's my feeling.
Yeah.
But again, it's something that's, some people have opinions. Some people feel like we should be this way or that way. But really, no one's organizing a march against getting rid of daylight savings. They're not, there's no rioting in the street. There's no, no one's really getting upset about it. And we still can't do that. So those are the kind of things where you're like, why?
Yeah. And to your point, Scott, like I would want to know like why can't this happen? Like honestly. And if I would, you know what I would do if this was actually true, I would be very, going back to what we said earlier, like being very intentional about how I ask questions. Because I would go to my congresspersons, I would go they're right down the street. My representative, congressional representative right down the street. I'd be like, yo, like what's going on with this? Like tell me why we can't get daylight savings changed, because this is ridiculous. Like, like specific stuff. Obviously the bigger things, there's more things that go into that, that I it would blow my mind, probably, with some of the things that they know. But the simple things, you're right to your point, Scott. Like, why can't we figure out some of the simpler things? There is nuance with the daylight savings days, because like I think about like the more of the rural areas where like even broadband internet is like difficult, and healthcare and all those different things. So that kind of like shifts. But like I'm wondering, like, how do we are very smart people when we want to be to figure out difficult and complicated issues. But when it comes to something simple, it's like, yo, what's going on? So yeah.
And you were talking about how once they get into office, they probably are aware of things that they weren't aware of before, because there's stuff that we don't know about, right? And maybe that's an argument for, we've mainly been talking about this would improve things, right, if people couldn't lie. But maybe that's a situation where it would be bad, right? There's probably a lot of stuff that the government, like the president, people, the CIA, things like this, that they know about that they're keeping from us, and maybe that's a good thing. Sometimes, not always, but sometimes, there's some times where sharing everything would be bad. Military situations, things like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's good for somebody, let's say, captured behind enemy lines. It's good for them to be able to lie and not give away where all their, all the other people are, right?
Yep.
Give away the big invasion plan. I don't know, whatever. Whatever it is. But so there are times where lying can be a good thing.
Yeah. Which would you rather just lie to me? I don't or omit, just be like, we're working on it. I can't comment at this time. Like, that's all right. Or that's big. We can't comment on that. Or something, yeah.
And people have differing opinions on whether this should be allowed or not. But like the police are allowed to lie in an interrogation in order to get a confession from somebody, which can be manipulated and used improperly. But it can be a good tool as well in some situations. So
this was a good one. I like this question.
So here's something to think about. If you were incapable of lying, just think back to like the last couple of days. Was there any specific situation you can think of where it would have gone differently if you weren't able to lie? Even small lies, right?
I'm not thinking of any.
Well, I coach my son's basketball team, 8th grade basketball, and we had a tournament over the weekend, and there was a couple of times where a kid, passed it and the other team stole it. It was a bad pass or whatever, and I said something like, "That's all right, no big deal, that's okay."
And you didn't really feel that way.
I didn't really mean that, but I was trying to be encouraging, and I don't want to just constantly tell him, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
Right. That's right.
I don't know. There's lots of little things that you don't really think of. Oh, I was lying. But if you stop and think about it, really, I was. I don't know, little interactions like that.
Well, I'm thinking of one. It's actually really funny. So, it wasn't one that I did, but I wish they would have said something. So my mom is getting remarried. We're having our wedding celebration this weekend, actually. So we're prepping for that. And my wife, she's wedding coordinating for her. And so we were doing like these little bags and stuff like that. And my youngest brother, he was tasked to go get like candy and bring it over to my house so we can fill all these little, goodie bags. He asked me, how much candy should I get? And I said, well, there's going to be about 75 people. Like, do you understand like how much candy you should get? He's like, yeah, I do. They showed up with 2 bags, small bags of like 75 pieces each. And I'm like, man, that's not enough, man. Like, that means everybody's going to get 2 pieces of candy. Why didn't you ask for clarification? He's like, I thought about asking you, but I said, I got it. So then he like stressed about it and had to go back to the store and spend another hour trying to figure out the candy. So, they could have saved some time if they were just a little bit honest about what they needed or the information. Or I'm like, man, I could have really maybe I should have just was a little bit more specific, get a lot of candy and we'll figure it out later or something. I don't know. But it was so funny.
Leftover candy's not a bad thing.
It's not a bad thing at all. Not a bad thing at all. It's so funny.
But again, that's another one of those situations where you're not really being deceitful, but where someone would say, "You got this," and you would just say, "Oh, yeah, I got it," and then kind of figure it out later.
Yeah.
Sort of fake it till you make it, I guess.
Yeah. It can't be that hard. It's all right. Yeah. Just picking up candy. Then, got a bag and a half. Not good.
And so you mentioned getting married. I wonder how much, whether not being able to lie would be good for marriages or bad for marriages. Like, would it lead to more divorce or less divorce? I'm not sure. If you knew you couldn't lie about something, maybe you'd be less likely to, you're not the I don't know, guy's not going to stop off at the bar and have a few drinks if he knows when he gets home he's not going to be able to lie to his wife about it, right?
Yeah.
Would you be less likely to do those things, or would you just do them and then tell the truth about it? I don't know which way that would
suspect
go.
most people would be less likely to do them.
Yeah. So not being able to lie, if you knew that you couldn't lie about something, now it doesn't mean you have to go home and tell her. You don't have to come home and say, "Hey, I stopped at the bar." But if she asks, you're going to have to say yes.
Where have you been? Right.
Yeah.
Where have you been? You're going to have to, So are you less likely to do those things then? I don't know.
I would think so.
All of a sudden, everybody's going to be lawyers. Yeah.
Yeah. Or like little petty theft stuff, right? Like, oh, I borrowed Bob's, weed trimmer, and
Yeah.
I'm just gonna forget to give it back to him, right? Well, if I know that when he asks me about it, I'm gonna have to tell the truth, maybe I'm less likely to accidentally forget to return it. I don't know. Maybe I'm more likely to do the right thing.
Yeah. I wonder if folks get more cunning around how they respond since they can't lie.
Right.
So like, if I were that,
it's like a technical truth.
Yeah. So if I borrowed somebody's, clippers or something like that, and they were like asking me, I'm like, well, you didn't ask about them, so I just, I kept using them. So, which is that's not a lie. It's very true. He didn't ask me if I stole them. He just asked me, hey, did you borrow those? Do you still have them? Like, yeah, I still have them. Yeah. So I don't know. Yeah, I just get people get more crafty, I think, with some of the things, more petty things.
Yeah, or you try and do the double negative trick. Well, I wasn't not planning to not return them to you, never.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, I don't know what you're saying.
People are creative.
Yeah,
so,
That's true. That's
who knows?
True. Maybe we just get more creative in ways to deceive instead of being able to lie.
Yeah.
And it would be different, too, if this was the way the world had always been, that no one was ever able to lie, as opposed to someone flips a switch and all of a sudden you're not able to lie, which would be completely different.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
if you grew up in this world, you wouldn't even have a concept of lying, right? If no one can do it, it's not like I'm going to try to lie and I'm not going to be able to, because it's not a thing you're aware of. So there was another, so you mentioned the movie and we talked about the invention of lying, but there was another movie, Liar Liar.
That's the one I was thinking of. I was just trying to look that up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it was Jim Carrey, and all of a sudden he couldn't lie.
Yeah.
Because I think it was like a birthday wish from his son, daughter, whatever, something like that.
Yep.
And he wasn't able to lie. And I remember one spot where the judge asked him something, and he came up with some sort of technically convoluted thing, instead of answering the question. And the judge said, "Is that true?" And he says, "I don't know, it must be," because he was able to say it.
Oh my
So
God.
he's something like, I read a study that this, and that, I don't know, something. So
Yeah.
And maybe that's another way to get around the lying thing too, is instead of saying this is the way this is, you say, well, I saw an article that said this, right? Well,
So therefore,
I'm not saying that I think it's true. I'm saying I saw an article that said this, and it makes it seem like I'm saying this is true.
Yeah. And that's one of those technical truths because you're not necessarily lying. Yeah. That's a good point.
But in that movie, I think and to humorous effect, of course, is the idea, but at least a lot of those little interactions with people where the secretary asks him a question and he has to tell her the uncomfortable truth. And
yep.
that's a lot of what he runs into. But again, he's a lawyer in the movie, and that makes it really difficult because a lot of trying a case or being in court is sort of being deceptive. Not always for bad reasons, right? Sometimes for good reasons, but you're presenting your side, this one perspective. You're trying to give them a skewed perspective of the case, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A lawyer friend of mine told me that he's like, you have no idea how much psychology plays into being a lawyer. And I was like, oh, that's a really good point. That I feel like even the whole liar perspective, like, because there's like a compelling for him in that movie, and I'm curious, like, if there was, and that goes back to what I said earlier, if we were compelled to it, or to your point, Scott, if we were like, this is what we were brought into, because I think if all of a sudden a switch happens versus us like growing up, this would change how we like speak and talk to each other. But like, I feel like it would be a wild ride if all of a sudden one day we woke up and we couldn't tell a lie, and we're just like compelled to be honest or tell the truth, and can't even bend it. That's another conversation though.
Yeah. Well, and it definitely, I think overall it would cause you a lot of stress for sure.
Yep.
But I guess eventually we would adapt and adjust the way we do things, and yeah.
Absolutely.
And I mean, it would also help if you knew. It's kind of like the would you rather. Would you rather be able to detect every lie you hear? Well, you would essentially have that superpower because no one's able to lie. So you know when they tell you something, it's true.
Right.
I mean, that would affect. So we've talked a lot about how it would affect us not being able to lie, but how would it affect you if you knew other people were telling you the truth? You wouldn't ever doubt what they told you.
Yeah.
Again, back to politicians. Currently, they get up there and they say, this is this way, and we did this, and this is how many, whatever statistic, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
Back to the building the wall, right? We built this many feet of this wall, and we're going to, that's true then, right? They did it.
Yeah. But then you go into the breakdown of that, you're like, that was already planned. There's like minutia ways of like, it's been flipped. Of like, we did that. And it's like, actually, that was already planned,
right,
budgeted,
right.
all those
well,
other things.
He wouldn't be able to say, and that was a whole argument, right? So
Yeah.
I think at one point, was it Trump that said we built a certain size and they said it was already built?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was so, yeah.
Anyways, but he wouldn't be able to say, we built this much since I did that, right? He wouldn't be able to lie about that.
Well, and I have to go back to, I think what I said earlier is, if they believe it, it's true. Is it a lie?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're just delusional enough to believe your own lies, does that make it not a lie anymore? I don't know.
And I've definitely met some people that
Yeah,
just
if you're delusional enough to believe that the Dodgers are a good baseball team, does that make it a lie anymore?
I think that's definitely how relationships would change.
Yeah. I'm gonna let that one slide, Scott. Oh my goodness.
I grew up by Des Moines, where the AAA Cubs are. So
Okay.
I mean, it was just natural that I was going to end up being a Cubs fan. So.
Nice. Love it.
And I don't care about sports, so I don't have a hunt in this.
Well, that was my next question, Steve. Is which team are you supporting?
Yeah.
You pick a team, you pick a sports, and I know literally next to nothing about it. So.
Well, all you need to know is the Cubs are better than the Dodgers, and you're
Okay. Well, I was in New Orleans this weekend, or actually yesterday and Monday, and I guess the Bears were in town playing, and there were, let's say, enthusiastic fans from Chicago.
Yeah.
There.
Yeah.
So, and
sure.
New Orleans, what's the right word? Attracts enthusiastic people anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. It's an interesting.
It was something.
It's not a town that you go to be calm, right?
No.
Typically, no.
No. I was just there a few weeks ago, Steve. My first time.
Yeah.
And there was a Saints game on, and like I've never seen so much Saints gear in my life. They do not play, and everybody's pretty enthusiastic. We'll just leave it there.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I did the food tour. So
Yes, same.
I ate my way through New Orleans. So
Same. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. I've only been to New Orleans once. It was in high school for like a church youth trip thing. So we were there for like a convention conference, whatever. So we saw some of the city, but that was a while ago.
You got to go back for the food. You got to go back for the food, Scott. It was
Yeah, I should.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been over 20 years ago now, so I only kind of remember it. So the Dodgers are one of those fun teams that the name doesn't make sense where they are now because they had moved.
Yep.
And so, yeah, just like, again, Los Angeles, the Lakers,
Lakers,
right?
yeah.
There's not a lot of lakes in Los Angeles, but
Nope.
they're from
Yeah.
Minnesota, so.
Yeah. Which I didn't realize that. My wife's from Minnesota, so I didn't realize that. She told me that. I was like, oh, I didn't know that. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the Minnesota Lakers, yep. Makes sense. The Utah Jazz, they used to be in New Orleans. That's where they originally came from.
There it is.
That's why they were the Jazz, which makes a lot more sense than Utah, right? Cool. All right, well, I don't know how we got from lying to sports, but I wonder, in sports, there is some deception. You do some deception, but I don't know if outright lying in sports so much. Especially, like in baseball, right? Like you're trying to trick the pitcher into thinking you're going to steal, maybe, and you're leading off a little too far, or the pitcher is trying to make it look like he's going to throw a curveball when he's going to throw a fastball, things like that. But you're not really lying. That's more being deceitful, I guess.
Yeah.
But in a good way. But yeah, I wonder, I guess maybe not sports, but again, back to games. How many games involve lying, like poker? Poker is, obviously you're lying. You're trying to lie, right? Mm-hmm. In poker.
Well, are actions lying or is lying words?
Hey.
Right. That's true too. Yeah.
I think about poker. I guess I don't consider. I would right now. I'm not considering that lying, as opposed to not revealing, what you have, or you have a good hand or a bad hand or whatever.
Right. Are you lying through your actions by betting big when you don't have anything, or holding off when you do have a big hand?
Yeah, I'm not sure I would.
That's true.
Yeah.
Does that count as lying? Is it just speaking that's lying? And so then back to, hey, how's it going? Could you just shrug your shoulders and move on and not say anything, and that's not really lying? Or
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know. That's a
Or
good
could
point.
you shake your head no instead of saying no because you don't want to lie?
Right.
Yep.
And maybe then people would know, if everybody is unable to lie and you ask somebody a question and they just answer with a gesture instead, oh, that's not really true, because otherwise they would have said it.
Yep. That's a good point.
I don't know. Yeah, is something like shaking your head, is that a form of speaking, right? Sign language counts as speaking, right, in a way?
Yeah.
Is it the same kind of thing? Are you doing a very primitive form of sign language when you do your gestures and things?
It's deep.
Yeah.
It's deep.
I think that's carrying it a bit too far, personally, but
Interesting. Well, I think it would definitely be a different world if we were unable to lie. There's so many little things. We often think of lying as just sort of that's a bad thing. You shouldn't lie. You shouldn't lie, right? Okay, right. But there's so many little instances where there's small lies that are a part of life and really not necessarily a bad thing. So some of the biggest things with lies to me come in with just trials and court cases and just people being arrested in general and politics. Those are, in my mind, like lying, those are the things that pop out in my head. You just sort of think of as they're lying. But
well, it would be an interesting experiment, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
for sure. It would be interesting if we could do it for a week or something. That would be pretty interesting. Well, thank you guys. I think this was a great conversation. I appreciate it. Before I forget to ask you, Jonathan, where can people find out stuff about you? Do you have anything you want to promote?
Yeah. So folks can connect with me on LinkedIn is where I'm primarily active. Jonathan L. Dumas. That's Dumas, as in Sam. Or if you want to connect, sign up for my email list, get to know me a little bit more, you can find me on heyjonathandumas.com. And I have a workshop that's openly available as a freebie to check it out on my roadmap to career joy. So if you're looking for a career transition, different things like that, I help people navigate to feeling career joy.
Nice. And Steve, your book is out there?
The book is The Bezos Letters, 14 Principles to Grow Your Business Like Amazon. It is available on Amazon. And the book website is thebezosletters.com, so there's more information there about the book. And then I'm also active on LinkedIn, so that'd be a great place to connect.
Cool. Awesome. Well, I'll put links to all those things in the the show notes. I always want to say, so I'm used to YouTube now, and so I always want to say links in the description below, but that's not the way it works for the podcast. They're some random place depending on where people are listening to it. So
Yep.
so the links are in the places where you expect links.
Where
to
you
be.
expect them? Yeah, that's probably the way to
We'll
phrase
go
it.
with
now,
that.
isn't it?
Yeah.
The usual places.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, this was fun. I'm not lying about that either.
All
But
right.
you wouldn't know because I could lie.
Yeah.
You could. That's true.
Cool. All right. Well, thank
All
you
right.
so much for joining me and talking about lying, and appreciate it.
My
You guys
pleasure,
have a good
Jonathan.
day.
Pleasure to meet you and
Pleasure.
Yeah.
have a chat with you.
Yes, absolutely. Y'all take care. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, Scott. Take care.
I'm just gonna say it, the Dodger Stadium is not good. Like, it's very old. It's not good. If you go to Petco Park,
all right.
it's like incredible. Like, so good.
Are you from LA, Jonathan, or just like the
I'm
Dodgers
from San
for
Diego.
other reasons?
Yeah, I'm
San
from
Diego. So
Yeah,
how'd you
yeah,
end up
yeah.
a Dodgers fan then?
The Padres are more recently good. They weren't. Mentor of mine, like, love the Dodgers, and so that's how I hopped on the train.
And haven't gotten off yet, huh?
Yeah. Still got a good amount of Dodger gear in my house.